Welcome to the Sunday morning worship service at DuPage Unitarian Universalist Church. My name is Chris Cable, and I'm a member of the Board of Trustees. Unitarian Universalism is a faith tradition committed to creating a just and flourishing world for all people. Our Universalist theology tells us that every person is worthy of love. Thus, when we say, whoever you are, wherever you are on life's journey, you are welcome here, this is our message of love to you, inviting your whole self into this space to help us co-create a world centered on our values. We invite you to learn more about us and consider joining this community to enact our values of equity, justice, transformation, pluralism, interdependence, and generosity. One special announcement, now is time to let your elected representatives know your values. This weekly email to your inbox will offer you an opportunity to contact your local, state, and federal officials about the issues that matter to you. The Justice in Action team will provide you all the information you need to contact your representatives on issues that align with our UU values, from phone numbers to the script you can use or call or email them. Sign up today during coffee hour with Robert Mirabali and Megan Kuhl in Creeves Hall, or email justiceinAction@DuPageUUchurch.org, and that is justice with 2 U's. Now, if you're online, I invite you to greet each other through the chat, and if you're present here, I invite you to turn to someone you did not come with and greet them with a wave and good morning greeting.
I light this chalice for the UU shared value of justice. We work to be diverse, multicultural, beloved communities where all thrive. Thus, we covenant to dismantle racism and all forms of systemic oppression. We support the use of inclusive democratic process to make decisions within our congregations, our association, and society at large.
Good morning. Today we have a guest worship leader, Casey Akers. Casey Akers is a member of the Appalachian community from the pocket of Merrimack, a small town 30 minutes south of Virginia Tech called Reiner. They have a master's in divinity and a bachelor's in religious studies. Right now, they are proud to be a substitute teacher for their local area. Casey is also honored to have been a member of DuPage UU Church remotely for the past year and looks forward to many more years supporting our community through online gatherings. They thank you for the opportunity to speak so openly to our shared congregation and hope that their words bring inspiration for further conversation as we fight for a better tomorrow.
Good morning. Welcome to this place of love and community flourishing. We gather together to open our hearts, to expand our minds, and to see the sacred within each other. Come, let us worship together.
Please rise in body or spirit and turn to page 127 in the gray hymnal, Can I See Another's Woe? Can I see another's woe and not be in sorrow too? Can I see another's grief and not seek for kind relief? Can I see a falling tear and not feel my sorrow share? Can a father see his child weep nor be with sorrow filled? Can a mother sit and hear infant groan and infant fear? No, no, never can it be. Never, never can it be.
Please join me in reading our DUC mission statement. We gather as an inclusive community to grow in character, mind, and spirit, and to transform the world towards fairness, love, and compassion.
Our vision of beloved community is rooted in the relationship we have with each other, our world, and creation. Each week, we share our joys and concerns. Today's flowers were given by DUC Young Adult Group in celebration of Young Adult Group Project Chair Casey Akers, thank you guys, first visit to the church, and their first service as a guest celebrant. Don Daditka shares that his wife, Sally Ballin, passed away on 2/6/25 after a fall and a long, debilitating illness. Sherry Burngame shares, my mother will be having surgery this week. She is 92 and the surgery is complicated, requiring repair for a fracture and knee removal and replacement. Please keep them in your hearts. Even when the cares of the world weigh heavy on us, may we find joy in our connections with each other and in the pleasures that life holds. Let us care for one another and for ourselves in all the ways we can. At this time, Mandy has an additional information to pass along.
Good morning, all. My heart is heavy today for many reasons, but most especially for the heartbreaking news that it came out of upstate New York this past weekend with the murder of a transgender individual and the 5 individuals who kept them confined over the past month. We know that hate is strong and prevalent in our world right now. We know that it can feel overwhelming, overpowering, but hate does not have the final word. And so in this moment, let us hold in our hearts all of those who are hurting, most especially our queer and transgender siblings. I invite you to share with me these words from Minnie Khumalo, Souls of the Soil. The souls of the soil scream and call. They hold space for us between rocks in hard, abandoned places. Their names linger beneath the skin, like seeds nurtured in soft dreams scattered in dust. They are the lonely fruit of a swollen land, growing out their pain within us. The souls of the soil beckon and call. Answer, love.
It is time to gather. Today, my story is one that many of you may already know. It is Lion King 2, Simba's Pride, adapted by Eric Subin and illustrated by Art Mulvaney. King Simba and Queen Nala had a new baby. "It's a girl," shouted Rafiki. The Lion King's wise advisor held up the new Princess Kiara for all the animals to see. Simba and Nala looked on proudly. They were thrilled with their new daughter. So were their good friends Timon, Pumbaa, and Zazu. All the animals of the Pride Lands bowed low to the royal family. As Kiara grew, she loved to explore, but Simba was worried about her safety. "Stay in sight of Pride Rock," he warned her, "and stay away from the outlands." Simba asked Timon and Pumbaa to secretly keep an eye on Kiara whenever she wandered off. But one day, Kiara discovered that she was being followed, and she was absolutely furious. Kiara waited until Timon and Pumbaa were busy eating grubs, and then she sneaked off alone. Bounding along the banks of Swampy River, Kiara ran, wham, right into another cub. He was an outsider, an enemy of the Pride Lands, and the 2 cubs snarled fiercely at one another. But they didn't have time to fight. Suddenly, a nearby log opened its mouth wide. It was no log. It was a hungry crocodile. In fact, the cubs were surrounded by hungry crocodiles. "Ah!" screamed Kavu, the outsider cub. "Run!" shouted Kiara. "This way!" And Kiara managed to escape, but Kovu was trapped. Then, just as one of the crocodiles was about to snap, Kovu in its jaws, Kiara leaped on the crocodile's head, slamming its mouth shut. And the 2 cubs ran up a tree to safety, and they looked at each other in amazement. "I did it!" Kiara exclaimed as she realized that she could take care of herself. You were really brave, Kiara said to Kovu. You were pretty brave too, Kovu replied, and then the cubs started a game of tag. But their innocent game was soon interrupted when Simba leaped into the clearing to protect his daughter. Moments later, Kovu's mother, Zira, did the same for her son. Zira had once been a follower of the evil lion Scar, who had tried to take over the Pride Lands. And when Simba defeated Scar and regained his position as rightful king, he banished Zira and the rest of Scar's followers to the Outlands. Now Zira faced Simba. Scar chose Kovu to be the rightful king of the Pride Lands, she told Simba. You haven't seen the last of us. And Simba walked Kiara back to Pride Rock. You have to be more careful, he scolded her gently. I love you, and I don't want anything bad to happen to you. But it's more than that. As future queen of the Pride Lands, you must be careful for the good of the Pride. Back in the Outlands, Zira scolded Kovu for playing with Kiara. She didn't seem so bad, Kovu said to Zira. I thought we could be friends. Friends? Said Zira. She thought for a moment. That's it. That's how we'll beat Simba and take over the Pride Lands. We'll get to Simba through his daughter. Kiara and Kovu did not meet again for many years. As Kovu grew bigger and stronger, Zira tried to teach him how to be like Scar. She watched and waited for a chance to take over the Pride Lands. At Pride Rock, Kiara had also grown bigger and stronger. Finally, the time came for her first hunt. All by herself, she headed towards the plains. At last, Zira saw her chance. She sent some of the outsiders into the tall grass with burning sticks, and soon the grass all around Kiara was on fire. She was trapped. Suddenly, a handsome young lion bravely made his way through the smoke and flames and carried Kiara to safety. The young lions looked at each other. Kovu, said Kiara, recognizing her childhood playmate. Just then, Simba arrived. I humbly ask to join your pride, Kovu said to him. And so Kovu came to stay at Pride Rock, just as Zira had planned. But instead of killing Simba, Kovu learned the ways of the Pride Landers. He spent hours with Kiara, teaching her how to hunt. In return, Kiara showed Kovu how to have fun. Soon, Kovu and Kiara fell in love. That had not been part of Zira's plan. Simba, like Kovu, had hoped the young lion would decide to stay. Simba liked Kovu and hoped the young lion would decide to stay with the Pride Landers for the rest of his life. Then one day, as Simba and Kovu walked the Pride Lands, Zira and the Outlanders took them by surprise. Well done, Kovu, Zira said to her son. You got the Lion King out here alone, just as we had always planned. You? Cried Simba, looking at Kovu. But there was no time for Kovu to explain, for just then the outsiders attacked. Outnumbered, Simba had to fight for his life. Simba tumbled into the ravine, followed by Zira's fierce lions. Racing through the narrow gorge, he dodged rocks and logs. Suddenly, he reached a dead end. A pile of logs blocked his path. Simba tried to climb over the logs, but they shifted underneath him. As the Outlanders closed in, the pile came crashing down, and at the last moment, Simba leaped to safety. The chase was over. And with the help of Kiara, Zazu, Timon, and Pumbaa, the injured Simba made his way back to Pride Rock. All the Pridelanders were very worried about their wounded king. Kovu followed, hoping to be taken back into the Pride. "You don't belong here," said an angry Simba. "Now go." But Kiara could not believe that Kovu would trick Simba, so she followed Kovu into the wild. "Let's run away and start a pride of our own," Kovu said to her. "If we do that, there will never be peace between our prides," said Kiara. "No, we must go back." And as Kovu and Kiara headed home, the Pridelanders and the outsiders were meeting in one last great battle. "Attack!" Zira screamed, and she leaped at Simba, and the two began to fight. But when the two young lions appeared, the battle came to a halt. "Daddy, this has got to stop," Kiara shouted. "We are all part of the circle of life." Both the Pridelanders and the outsiders knew that Kiara spoke the truth. Only Zira refused to accept Kiara's wisdom. And now that the other outsiders had turned against her, Zira had no place to go. Enraged, she lunged at Kiara, and they both plunged into a ravine. Kiara survived, but Zira was never seen again. Finally, the hatred had come to an end. The outsiders joined the Pridelanders and took their rightful place in the circle of life. And in the proudest place of all sat Kovu and Kiara together at last. Let's sing to the children.
Giving of our treasure is one of the ways we reciprocate the many gifts we are given by this community. It is also how we live our values in the world. The Tom Galloway Scholarship Fund at College of DuPage is a legacy of Tom Galloway, who, with his wife Bobby, was a longtime member of DUUC. Tom was president of the congregation from 1994 to 1996. He established a scholarship program to support African American students at the College of DuPage that our church has been supporting for more than 20 years. Your generous donations pay about a third of the annual tuition for a scholarship recipient and have also been used by recipients to obtain access to computers, purchase books, and help with living expenses. Today's offering is given and received in a spirit of generosity and gratitude. comes from Denise Gardinal's book, The Unquiet Earth. People came to the clinic who had worked all their lives, who had paid their own way and never taken charity. They came because their children were hungry and sick, because they were hungry and sick. The men in work clothes, the women in shapeless polyester dresses, the children with swollen bellies beneath thin t-shirts. When I finished with my patients, they moved to the next line to receive the white-wrapped blocks of commodity butter and cheese sent from Washington. Of course it was demeaning. Of course it wasn't enough. But children don't care for all that, and a cheese sandwich will fill a child's stomach.
Please rise in body and spirit and turn to page 147 in the Gray Hymnal, When All the Peoples on This Earth.
Good morning again. And welcome. My name is Casey Akers, and as previously noted, I am a proud LGBTQ Appalachian from a small town in Virginia. Being part of my community is something that I am proud of. In fact, it's one of the things I tell people, one of the first things I tell people about myself. A piece of my identity that is beyond me and stems from a place of belonging. After all, there's great food, beautiful music, the scenery is breathtaking, and simply put, it's home. My mom would tell me growing up, if nowhere else you belong here, the mountains made you, and the mountains will call you home when the time comes. When I think about where I want to settle, it is the Appalachian Mountains that are always the answer. Yet I am a nomadic spirit in truth. I like to travel. So it was no surprise to my family that I traveled farther and farther away from my academic studies. First to Northern Virginia, then to New Jersey and Maryland. In fact, it took me nearly 10 years from the time I got in a car as a freshman to that inevitable phone call that, yeah, I would be coming home. I would be returning to the mountains that made me. When I did make it home, I was met with the 2024 election in full swing. To make ends meet, I became a substitute teacher and was assigned to one of the smallest middle schools in the most rural parts of my area. This particular side of town is deep in the holler, or in other words, you have to climb the hill both ways to get to school. Every morning when I make my way down those hills and turn a corner, I am met with a jarring picture. Painted on a giant semi-truck storage unit is a mural of a certain presidential candidate standing proud with a fist in the air. Behind them are the 10 Commandments and a beautiful depiction of a rising sun. Before them is a presumed man and woman bowing their heads in reverence to the seemingly biblical presidential leader. The message is clear. This president is not only the future leader, but a biblical prophet. I don't know about you, But no matter who I vote for, I don't think the word biblical prophet is on the list of criteria. Nor would I hold them in such reverence. It's a bit creepy if you ask me. My first initial reaction is simple. Oh my gosh, but with a few more choice words thrown in there. Though it is jarring, I still have a job to do. So every morning I shake it off and continue forward to work. Once I get there, I'm greeted with a bunch of kids who open the door with warm smiles and welcome greetings and big political shirts that may as well say, "You're not welcomed here." They are perfectly happy to be nice to me, as long as their perceived image of me remains to be a closed-hearted woman who believes the same way they do. Everyone else, according to them, are enemies of their way of life and at the very least should be shamed in compliance or worse. Comments regarding the other focus on how they are taking jobs, stealing food, causing irreversible harm, and worse, taking what is theirs by birthright. I stay quiet, but handle the students' comments with the ease of a pro. After all, I grew up here too. One student in particular found it exceedingly important to know my political affiliations. It's not a secret that faculty and staff are expected to keep their political beliefs out of the classroom, and so I found creative ways of dodging the students' questions. "Miss Akers," he'd ask, "do you like blue or red better?" I'd answer, "I'd like to see the color of your pencil painting its way to that A that I know is in there." "Miss Akers," he'd continue, "do you like donkeys or elephants?" "I like our school mascot." And finally, "Miss Akers, do you like Taylor Swift?" I'm more of a bluegrass and heavy metal person myself, but hey, whatever you like is just fine. The last answer always led to a stunned shock that a teacher would actually listen to heavy metal. For weeks, these questions were excessive, and for weeks, I dodged them. Not because I didn't have an opinion, but for my safety and job security. After all, what would their parents' reactions be? What would the reactions be of others? The election came and went in stunned silence from me. Outside the students' endless questions, staff did not talk about the impending vote or their place in it. We kept quiet. We kept friendly. But make no mistake, I was angry and hurt and scared of the future. I'll be honest, a small part of me wanted to simply leave. Get up, pack my bags, my things, and move north or west or somewhere where rainbow signs could fly in the streets and a friendly smile wouldn't be lost on anyone just because of a few differences. I'd ask myself in my head, why did it matter so much to them? To exclude and exile as a matter of principle is such a toxic existence, don't you think? It's not a pretty picture I'm painting, is it? I love my culture. I love my people. There are certain pockets of open and inclusive Appalachian people, but those who I'm telling you about certainly aren't it, are they? But rather than judging them on the basic information, let us take a closer look. Roger A. Lohman, a retired professor of social work at West Virginia University, discussed some of the struggles associated with life in the Appalachian culture. In his work, 4 Perspectives on Appalachian Cultures and Poverty, he explains a diversity of hardships faced by the Appalachian people. The biggest being, well, lack of money. If a people who, regardless of their employment, fail to make ends meet, then naturally their focus is on that instability. Such insecurity will cover most of their mental and emotional energy. This lack of money and resource is evident in the very real bureaucratic desire to move capitalism forward in the mountains but without producing a living wage for those who are working on the ground and driving those resources forward. Appalachian people work, but they are not paid enough to live. This struggle falls onto the culture itself. Through my own experience and Loman's work, we can see those impacts. Appalachian culture is a pocket-sized one. The mountains break Appalachian society apart into little towns or clusters of people. These people care for one another through trade, familiar ties, and community support. This is a people who hunt, farm, and survive not as a singular household, but as a group of people working together. Their thoughts and practices are the survival of their people, not necessarily the survival of the world. So we have a group of people who cannot make ends meet, but care about each other deeply and consider their smaller community as their main source of concern. Then you have predatory capitalism, forcing the majority of their time, resources, and energies for little to no gain. Loman states, in large measures, predatory capitalism has served the historic mission of giving voice to the alienation and sense of powerlessness often shared by poor and non-poor alike in the region. At the same time, from this perspective, poverty is often reduced to a mere background, a preamble concept serving only to introduce other questions. What are those questions? Well, how are we to survive? If a people are forced on their desire for economic, food, and shelter security, then when do they have time to empathize with others? More still, if there is another way of living that is different from their own, is it not rational to see that difference as an enemy to their own survival? Now, the Appalachian people in question, my people, struggling with such insecurity, are told by a political leader that through them there will be a solution and comfort, not for the other, but for them. Such an interest in the poor Appalachian people hasn't been seen since the 1960s. So, in desperate desire for survival, not only for themselves, but for their community, they're easily tricked. Through this lens, it is near impossible for someone facing such hardship to develop the empathy needed to care for others in similar hardships. So, friends, we must do it for them. This does not mean we need to excuse the behavior, hatred, and attack that some have towards others. On the contrary, by using empathy and understanding the struggle of people like those in the Appalachian poverty, we can better understand the appropriate action it takes to fight against racism, homophobia, and inspire a world of inclusivity and equity. If we can understand why the hate is there, where it's formed, and how it's sustained, we can also develop a successful strategy to communicate and to fight against it. Empathy can be a tool not for compliance, but for action. To understand and rise and answer. Friends, this is one of the reasons why we are facing such a struggle of imbalance and hate today. It's an answer to the question, why? And a suggestion as to how to combat that difference, the differences that we face. Earlier in the service, we read a small portion of the novel, The Unquiet Earth, by Denise Gardiner. This book is a fictional piece of the very real struggle of the Appalachian people, a struggle that is faced even today. I want to reread these words to you again, this time through the lens of what we've just discussed. People came to the clinic who had worked all their lives, who had paid their own way and never taken charity. They came because their children were hungry and sick, because they were hungry and sick, the men in their work clothes, the women in shapeless polyester dresses, the children with swollen bellies beneath their t-shirts. When I finished with my patients, they moved to the next line to receive the white wrapped blocks of commodity butter and cheese sent from Washington. Of course it was demeaning. Of course it wasn't enough. But children don't care for all that. and a cheese sandwich will fill a child's stomach. I encourage you, if you haven't read the book, to do so in time. Such understandings have the power to give you the tools for beneficial conversation as we continue to move forward in this time of uncertainty. Empathy can be used to change the hearts of others, to not only think about themselves, but to think about the humanity of others, and this book is a great tool to aid in that empathy. Finally, dear friends, I want to tell you one more story, and it's the one we started with today. The Lion King is a popular movie made by Disney, and due to its success, Disney thought it'd be fitting to release a sequel. This sequel was released in 1998 by the name of Lion King 2, Simba's Pride. Although it's considered a cult classic, this animated sequel isn't very well known. The story was the same we read during our time of gathering. It's a story of two families who fight for power and continued hatred for one another. This is a rich family. There is a rich family with all power and authority, and a poor family with food insecurity and instability. In the end, both families are about to fight with one another for land and resources. Fearing the impending fight and the ramifications of such quarrel, Kovu and Kiara race to intercept the fight and save both families. At the last minute, Kovu and Kiara jump between the two conflicting forces and stand before their respective parents. Kiara's father begins to argue with his daughter, suggesting that they, referring to the other family, was a dangerous problem that needed to be dealt with. Kiara responds to her father saying, "Them? Us. Look at them. They are us. What differences do you see?" Friends, what differences do we see? And are those differences truly so different? Or are they a response to a struggle that can be solved if we balance those issues with empathy? I ask you not to use such frustrations as a limitation, but as an instrument for empowerment as we stand up for others. All we need is a little bit of empathy. Blessed be.
Please rise, embody your spirit, and turn to page 133 in your gray hymnal, One World. One world is for all its sorrow, one world shaping one tomorrow, one humanity though riven, we to whom our world is given. From one world there is no turning, for one world the prophets yearning, one world of poets, sages, one world goal of all the ages. Worlds are eagerly expected, worlds so recklessly rejected. One has come, give willed it, one has covenants can build it. World of friendly ways and faces, cherished arts and honored races. One world, science, people free, it's from reliance.
Truth seekers, let us use our great gift of empathy as a tool to empower others. May we listen with open minds and hearts so that we can move the conversation forward. May we address the hardships that others face so that we can answer those struggles and teach those with closed hearts that it's okay to open up. Let's show others our good news, that we are here to love without ceasing, and in doing so, we inspire others to do the same. Let us be radical in our compassion, but determined in our resolve to move forward and face the challenges that we see together.
Please join me in reading our chalice extinguishing words. We extinguish the light of this chalice, but not the light in our hearts. Until we meet again, may the warmth of our community carry you.